All other sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect precious Bodhi. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time, tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. page 112 if you have the picture. If you have the 4 sessions Guru Yoga PDF, then it's page 12. I respectfully pay homage with fierce and longing faith of the 3 types to you, the glorious Guru, Lord of the 4 Kayas, with my body, speech, and mind. I make offerings of all these established things, outer, inner, and other. The one who offers that which is offered and the act of offering are indivisible in essence. This being so, I make this offering of the great single taste free from elaborations. Grant me the accomplishment of effortlessness. I lay bare the impairments and breakings of the vows of the 3 vehicles and rejoice in your liberating deeds. Please turn the wheel of Dharma in accordance with the capacities of those to be trained, and remain here for as long as samsara has not been emptied. I dedicate the merit accumulated in the 3 times to the welfare of wandering beings. I supplicate you, the Dharmakaya, great Vajradhara of the 6th family. I supplicate you, the 85 Indian Mahasiddhas. I supplicate you, Dilip Prajna Bhadra. I supplicate you, Naronyana Siddhi. I supplicate you, Marpa of Lodra, the translator. I supplicate you, Mila Shepa Dorje. I supplicate you, Dao Shonu of Dakpo. I supplicate you, the 3 Siddhas of Kam. I supplicate you, Dorje Gyalpo of Pagdum. I supplicate you, Jikten Dorje Beldra. I supplicate you, Supreme Refuge, Jikten Sumgön. I supplicate you, Dharma Lord Anashri. I supplicate you, Kenchen Sutrim Dorje. I supplicate you, Onchen Sonam Drakpa. I supplicate you, Drakpa Jungne. I supplicate you, Chung O Dorje Drakpa. I supplicate you, Toka Rinchen Senge. I supplicate you, Tsamche Drakpa Sonam. I supplicate you, Chuni Dorje Rinchen. I supplicate you, Tuku Dorje Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Nyani Chuki Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Shenyan Dundrum Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Rinchen Pyogi Gyalten. I supplicate you, Chogyal Rinchen Pelzang. I supplicate you, Rigzin Chuki Gyatso. I supplicate you, Gyawang Gunga Rinchen. I supplicate you, Rinjisen Rinchen Punso. I supplicate you, Rinchen Nampar Gyawa. I supplicate you, Penchen Pelgi Gyaltsen. I supplicate you, Chokle Nampar Gyawa. I supplicate you, Tsume Chogyao Punso. I supplicate you, Drupchen Tashi Punso. I supplicate you, Jesun Koncho Rinchen. I supplicate you, Rixin Chuki Drakpa. I supplicate you, Koncho Trinle Nam Yao. I supplicate you, Koncho Trinle Zangpo. I supplicate you, Trinle Dondu Chugyam. I supplicate you, Koncho Tenzin Rodu. I supplicate you, Tenzin Chugi Nima. I supplicate you, Kyabda Pime Gyalten. I supplicate you, Jamyan Choki Gyalten. I supplicate you, Druwang Choki Gyalten. I supplicate you, Rinchen Tempe Zegin. I supplicate you, Gyalwang Tu Jenima. I supplicate you, Rigzin Nuden Dorje. I supplicate you, Jason Choki Lodom. I supplicate you, Gyalcho Shive Lodro. I supplicate you, Jitsen Dhammagara. I supplicate you, dissolve Tenzin Tumten. I supplicate you, the Dabu God, you, protectors of wandering beings. I supplicate you, my kind root Guru. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the rarity of the freedoms and endowments. I still squander away my life. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on impermanence and death, I still fixate on composited phenomena as permanent. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the unmistaken nature of cause and effect, I still pervert what to adopt and what to abandon. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the sufferings of cyclic existence. I still take the way to the lower realms. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I safeguard the vows of individual liberation, I still lack renunciation and the determination to be free. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on all wandering beings as my parents. I still have bias attachment to friends and aversion for enemies. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate loving kindness and compassion. I still hold on to envy and enmity. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I cultivate aspiration and action bodhicitta, I still focus only on my own welfare. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my body as the deity's exalted form, I still cling to ordinary perception. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I have counted the mantras to be recited, I still waste away my life force. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate the samadhi of moon in the water. I still solidify things as real and substantial. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I conclude by dissolving in the subsequent stage, I still purify and confess superficially. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my own mind As free from elaborations, I still have conceptual attitudes. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate, not grasping at whatever arises. I still affix an artificial watchfulness. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate, resting freely in the natural state. I still amplify artificialities. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on unity beyond conceptions, I still get carried away by the masses of likes and dislikes. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, I supplicate you who are my refuge and protector. In this and all other lives, physician who removes the chronic diseases of samsara. Hero who vanquishes the enemies that are afflictive emotions, sun which dispels the darkness of ignorance, moon that protects from the heat of suffering, Drew which fulfills all our needs and desires, you Guru who are all inclusive and all sufficient. I supplicate you from the depths of my heart with compassion, swiftly heed me. Effortlessly bestow your blessings, grant me now and on this seat the naturally accomplished feast of the two benefits. I am endowed with both merit and devotion. Do not leave my hopes unfulfilled. Don't cast away my devotion in vain. Don't let my supplications vanish unanswered. Don't be indifferent with your compassion, refuge and protector in this life. In the intermediate state and beyond, whatever occurs, joy or sorrow, good or bad, only you are my hope. Look upon me with eyes of compassion. You alone are my hope. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Dakinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers, May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstructors who harm those who create obstacles, Maras who mislead, and their Mara retinues, have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I become a virtuous spiritual friend. With good qualities limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me in the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. So page 53, if you have the physical book. So yesterday we covered that section where it was, clearly pointed out in this teaching that this unique way of speaking of dependent origination, and specifically on how the dependent origination of cause and effect, which you can say is relative truth, that relative truth, that aspect of relative truth. There are 2 aspects of relative truth. I think we should clarify that. Sometimes when the Buddha says relative truth, he is here's the thing. The term, the original term, relative, what we now translate as relative, has 2 connotations. So that sometimes when the Buddha uses relative, he means like concealing. That means there's something deceptive about it. There is something that is deceptive about it, and therefore there's something that is unreliable about it. In other contexts, when the Buddha uses relative truth, it does not have this connotation of it being deceptive. And the second sense of relative truth is the sense that aligns with this dependent origination of cause and effect. So when it comes to dependent origination of cause and effect, when it comes to this aspect of relative truth, there's no deception about it. There's no falsity about it. There's no, like, oh, it only appears to be so, but it is not really so. Yeah, so this dependent origination, which is cause and effect, it has no connotation that this is something deceptive, this is something that is concealing the real truth, and something therefore to be done with or rid of when you achieve Buddhahood. So particularly Kyöpa Rinpoche, he emphasizes this level of understanding where the dependent origination, free from the 8 extremes, and the dependent origination, that is cause and effect, these two are completely and thoroughly non-opposed and non-contradictory and inseparable. So the last section we covered yesterday even very explicitly says, kind of saying, don't be surprised, that you don't find this explicitly taught by the Grandmaster Gampopa, or rather, speaking to Jikten Sumgön's disciples, the great Grandmaster Gampopa, or the Grandmaster Pamodrupa, because only Jikten Sumgön, the master, our master, only he made it very explicit, whereas it is implicit in Pamodrupa and in Gampopa. Further explain how, when Pamodrupa was residing on this side of Pamodru, this area, that's how he got the name Pamodrupa, meaning the one from Pamodru. Sow's crossing. Pamo is sow, as in female pig. Sow's crossing, name of that place. So when Pamodrupa was residing on this side of Pamodru, he did not teach this. Later, when he moved to this side, it has nothing to do with his moving. It's just a reference point for the disciples because they know about his life. So when he moved to this other side, when he moved to the east side, which probably then corresponds with, because elsewhere we know, Jikten Sumgön says, at a certain point, Pamodrupa mostly taught from the Jatakas regarding the dependent origination of cause and effect. Starting that point, Pamodrupa began to emphasize those teachings. And so now in this next section is dependent origination at the stage of Buddhahood. So what does it look like, at the stage of Buddhahood? Again, certain understandings of dependent origination, because it is the explanation for how, or a lot of times dependent origination is used to illustrate, to show more clearly how confusion arises. Then some people think, when Buddhahood is achieved, dependent origination disappears, or becomes irrelevant, or becomes irrelevant, doesn't apply anymore. But as we will see, and not surprisingly, that's not how Kyöpa Rinpoche would teach about this. So he says, the dependent origination of cause and result, or you could also translate, I think, as the dependent origination that is cause and result, is present at all times. And so this aspect of relative truth, which is the one that is not deceptive, not concealing, not mistaken, it's present at all stages of the process that we go through. At the time of the basis, when we are just ordinary beings and have not started practicing the Dharma, dependent origination that is cause and effect is there. It operates just exactly as it operates. At the time of the path, during the process that we embark on to achieve Buddhahood, during the practice of the yogas and the disciplines, it's also there and functioning in exactly the same way. Whether you're an ordinary person, samsaric person, with no interest and no time to practice Dharma, or you are a Dharma practitioner, and you have achieved, first bhumi, second bhumi, third bhumi, all of that, the dependent origination that is cause and effect is functioning exactly the same way as before. And at the stage of the result Buddhahood, that same dependent origination that is cause and effect still plays out in the exact same way. That fundamental nature is also called space-like dependent origination of cause and result. See, space-like comes back in again. So this is to remind us. And how? How is it that this, or rather, how is this dependent origination, which is cause and effect, is present in all three places? In the domain of ordinary confused beings, in the domain of the bodhisattvas and all the various spiritual practitioners on all different levels, and at the state of Buddhahood, because its nature is space-like. Its nature is space-like. This really helps, it's very helpful actually, because on the one hand, we diligently observe these precepts of training from the 5 basic precepts: not killing, not stealing, not committing adultery, not lying, and not partaking intoxicants, or at least the 5th one, not becoming intoxicated. These 5. From there, further elaborated those trainings. It is very easy, I think, if we observe those with a very rigid frame of mind, then our observation of those trainings, of the paying attention to cause and effect, instead of giving the right result, where we become more and more, not just mindful and careful, but also more and more free, observing those rules of trainings, observing those prescriptions, and avoiding those proscriptions. Proscribe meaning don't do, prescribe meaning do, what the Buddha recommended that we do, what the Buddha recommended that we don't do. All those things can also become very tight and very rigid. So in this phrase, space-like dependent origination, which is cause and effect, just this expression, can be so helpful and so necessary. If just space-like, then The other danger, everything is space-like. Then you're careless about your actions. And then you later you complain, you say, oh, I don't know. Seems like the more Buddhism I practice, the more headache, turns up. Then sometimes we even blame it on, Vajrayana. You say, oh, actually, yeah, Lama says, when you practice Vajrayana, a lot of obstacles will arise. Yeah? I'm sure you all have heard of this. Oh, when you practice Vajrayana, a lot of obstacles will arise. Yes, when you practice Vajrayana correct, there is this scenario where a lot of obstacles would arise because it's your past negative karma that have already started to ripen. Your practice is causing them to ripen faster, quicker, and hopefully in a less painful way. So that's a form of purification. But most of the time when I see people who say, oh, yeah, I don't know, I practice Dharma and more problems have turned up. And then they come and ask me, they say, is it like because my, like you said, Vajrayana practice, can cause more obstacles to arise, Actually, most of the time, I think it's just, no. You have knowingly, unknowingly, usually unknowingly, practice Vajrayana with magic thinking. And while in this further deluded state of magic thinking, you are not careful about your actions of body, speech, and mind, and you are creating obstacles. I'm now practicing Vajrayana, and then you lose your temper, you yell at people, you get annoyed. Then you say, oh, this must be wrath. Because I have been practicing this wrathful deity, so this is happening. Or I've been practicing this deity of bliss, so then attachment increases, You say, but oh no, this is Vajra bliss. Getting carried away and not even realizing what is going on. So too space-like. Until we say in English, it becomes spaced out or spacey. It becomes spaced out, and then suddenly 1 minute before it happens, or maybe less than 1 minute, 30 seconds before it happens, in your space-like delusion, you see a big truck coming at you. It turns out it's not the big truck is coming at you. It's in your space-like delusion, you step onto the highway. And then 30 seconds before it hits, you say, wait, where did this truck come from? This truck has always been doing what it's doing, is going down the highway. You, in your space-like delusion, step into the highway. That's the analogy of, not paying attention to dependent origination of cause and effect. Going off in the direction of space-like. That's the other error. First error is rigidly, and then like self-righteous. My morality is so good. My keeping of the rules is so good. With no understanding of space-like. These are the two. So these two problems, is solved in this one expression here. This fundamental nature is also called space-like dependent origination of cause and effect. Space-like dependent origination, which is cause and effect. Now, does it necessarily follow that good and bad causes also ripen as effects at the stage of Buddhahood? So now a rhetorical question, but a serious one is raised, which is, so at the stage of Buddhahood, you mean good and bad causes still produce effects? So here it says, first, consider this. Is the body of a Buddha free from cause and result because cause and result have been overcome? Or do cause and result exist for a Buddha's body? So he says, now, in order to answer the question, let's first think about this. Is the body of a Buddha free from cause and result because cause and result have been overcome? So sometimes this is the view that people have, that somehow Buddha's bodies are free from cause and result because when Buddhahood is achieved, cause and result have been overcome. Like cause and result is a problem to be solved, you see. Basically it's saying that. But what Kyoba Rinpoche is pointing out, it's not Kyoba Rinpoche made this up, you know. He's looking at it in a deeper way and communicating that to us. Cause and result, the principle of cause and result is not a problem to be overcome, but rather a reality, a principle to be understood, so that we can train our body, speech, and mind to operate in accordance with that principle. Anyway, here he says, is the body of a Buddha free from cause and result because cause and result have been overcome? Or do cause and result exist for a Buddha's body? Now his answer. A Buddha has a body of dependent origination. So even the Buddha's body and the Buddha's form, the Buddha's exalted form, is a form that is dependent origination. Otherwise, if there were no cause and result for this kind of body, how could the Vajra body of a Buddha ever be accomplished? So, meaning, if there's no cause and result involved here, then you will never be able to achieve the Vajra body of a Buddha. Moreover, it is taught that each of the 64 qualities of a Buddha is due to its respective good cause. Also, each of the light rays of a Buddha's body and so forth arises from its respective cause. As the highest continuum, the Uttara Tantra teaches, all the 64 qualities have their respective causes. They should be known in due order from the Jewel Sutra. And in the Light Ray Sutra, another light ray of my body is called Pure Eye. And why? Where did this come from? I worship the Buddhas with a variety of forms. I pay homage to the Buddhas in myriad forms. And so that light ray arose from that. And so Kyoba Rinpoche is quoting some text that everybody accepts to show that all these Buddha qualities arose from specific causes that we practice, that we gather. So, for example, it is said, when we engage in a cause like, actually, this is a good one. When we engage in a cause like sweeping, meaning cleaning, a place, a special place, a place where the Sangha gathers to practice, a place where Buddha teach, a place where, in other words, like a temple, a special place, a holy place, when we sweep and clean that place. If we know how to do it, this is important, not just like automatically, but if we know how to do it when we are cleaning the temple, we're cleaning the center, we're cleaning the retreat center, we're cleaning, that can become a cause for the arising of the appropriate Pure Land for when you achieve Buddhahood. That is said to be one way to cultivate that cause. And when we make offerings, when we make it, when I say when you know how to is not so difficult. It's basically keeping that awareness. As I sweep this, as I clean this, may the Pure Land, may the land that I accomplish Buddhahood in be pure and clean as it is here. And when we make offerings on the shrine, light candles, most of the time we're just mindlessly lighting candles. Or at most, we are carefully lighting the candles so as not to cause a fire, or, your match, you use a match, is burning quickly. So you very carefully light, careful but also quickly, right? Because it might burn you. At most, it's just that kind of attitude. Or we fill water bowls, At most, we're just like, oh, don't spill, don't spill, don't spill, don't spill. But if you know how to turn those into causes of these Buddha qualities, when you offer lamps, as it says here, I worship the Buddha with a variety of forms. So forms is related to eyes. So this light ray of my body called pure eye arose because while making offerings, while making objects of sight offerings to the Buddhas, I use that to train, to create the cause for the arising of these light rays. So when you offer lamps, when you know how to offer in that way, it becomes a cause for the arising of your particular set of specialty, so to say, when you are Buddha, when you are in the Pure Land. That's how Medicine Buddha gained the reputation for being also not only good for enlightenment, but also for helping with illnesses. And Amitayus, with vitality, Manjushri, wisdom, so on and so forth. Because even though all Buddhas are Buddhas in the same way, but the vows and the practices that they took are particular to each of them, and they relate in particular to how, in the Buddha state, they can more effectively connect with this type of beings, or this type of beings, or this type of beings, or this type of beings. That has to do with. So the Buddha's body, the exalted form of Buddhas, they arose based on dependent origination, that is cause and result. Thus it is taught that all of them are particular results that have particular causes. So this is the cause and result. Now, he goes on, he says, however, some hold that the Buddha passed away because of Ananda's failure to speak. And so he says, to explain, let's elaborate on this. What am I talking about? What are they talking about? So this relates a story that most people know, or at least Kyopa Rinpoche's audience knows. But he explains. He says, when the Buddha was requested by Mara to pass into nirvana, so towards the end of Shakyamuni's life, on several occasions, more than once, Mara came and said, "Oh man, time to die." Basically, those are the words, saying, so you've been teaching for a while, you've been teaching people about impermanence, so how about you? Time to go. So it said that Mara came, So when the Buddha was requested by Mara to pass into nirvana, he consulted Ananda on whether he should accede to Mara's request, whether he should agree with Mara or not. At that time, Ananda did not reply. So according to the story, it says Ananda didn't know what to say. Then the Buddha, so they say, acquiesced, agreed to Mara's request to pass away. But how could that have been possible? So Kyopa Rinpoche said, but no, it's not because Mara asked, then Buddha asked Ananda, then Ananda did not say, no, don't leave. Then the Buddha says, okay, I will agree with Mara. So now Kyopa Rinpoche says, that the Buddha passed away at the age of 80 was due to an aspiration that he made when he was arousing bodhicitta in the presence of Buddha Shakyamuni. And there was a Buddha in the past, many eons back, when our Shakyamuni was still just starting the path. One of the many instances where our Buddha Shakyamuni in his past lives generated bodhicitta. So in one famous story, he generated bodhicitta in front of this other Buddha who was called Maha Shakyamuni. So here it is saying, that on that occasion, the Buddha made a particular aspiration that then now, our Shakyamuni, when he achieved Buddha, then at the age of 80, he would pass away because he created that cause. He made that cause. And it's not because Mara asked and Ananda did not intervene. It's sort of like saying, it's Ananda's fault. In fact, in this story, it says that later, after the Buddha passed away, many of the disciples blame Ananda and said, our teacher hinted to you a few times that Mara asked him to go, and you did not ask him to stay. And so then he agreed with Mara. So it's your fault. They blame Ananda for that. Recently, I was just talking to someone. I said, this is a very common theme, Whoever is the favorite, becomes an object of jealousy. Even in the Buddha's immediate community, Ananda was his personal attendant and cousin. So Ananda was what you could today say, gatekeeper to Buddha. So then people, was jealous of him and also resented him because he was close to the Buddha. He had access that nobody else had. So after the Buddha passed away, they bullied him and said, "Your fault, that our teacher is gone." And then they're probably like, "What? I didn't do anything." And they're like, "Yeah, exactly. You didn't do anything. You should have done something." Moreover, in the country of Veranja, the Tathagata had to eat horse fodder for 3 summer months. So this is referencing another occasion where the Buddha and his disciples was they wandered from place to place to teach whoever is ready to be taught. And so for 3 months in this neighboring kingdom called Veranja, all the Buddha had to eat was horse feed. And for 3 months, because there was no food, there were no one making offerings to them except for this horse keeper. Yeah, he said, I cannot share with you my food. I don't have enough, but I have enough horse feed. You want that? You can have that. So for 3 months, it says the Buddha ate that. And again, why? Because certain causes and conditions that were created. In our Buddha Shakyamuni's past lifetimes. On other occasions, or in other examples, an acacia thorn pierced his foot. And he was wrongly accused by the wandering nun, Manavika. And Devadatta threw rocks at him. And he returned from alms round in the village of Panchasala with an alms bowl as clean as if it were just washed, meaning he did not get any food. Even Buddha did not get food some days. He had to perform austerities for 6 years and so forth. All of these are explained as the results of causes. Now, all these are causes and results. Now, also important, next point. Now, there are different opinions as to whether the Buddha suffered or not when all these things happened. His foot was pierced with a thorn. He went hungry. He had to eat horse feed for 3 months. So there are various opinions whether the Buddha suffered or not. In fact, some Buddhist traditions said he suffered. But here Kyopa says, but since the Buddha had abandoned feelings of happiness and suffering and everything in between, meaning the Buddha sees completely the dependent nature of happiness and suffering, and so he is no longer attached to those categories. He's no longer under the power of those categories. He's no longer dragged around by the 8 worldly concerns. So to substitute, we could say, it's not saying, when you practice to be not under the power of the 8 worldly concerns, that the 8 worldly concerns don't turn up. It's that when they do turn up, you do not suffer. When the column in the 8 worldly concerns you don't like turn up, you don't suffer. When the column of the 8 worldly concerns that you like goes away, you don't suffer. Same way here. But since the Buddha had abandoned feelings of happiness and suffering and everything in between, it is definite that the Buddha did not experience suffering. However, cause and result continue to play out on the stage of a Buddha. Yeah, cause and result continue to play out. In fact, we also know the Buddha had an ongoing throughout his life digestion problems, digestive. So that in the end, in fact, he died of probably dysentery, food caused by food poisoning. But it's an underlying issue in his life. But he did not suffer. Pain, yes, exists, of course. But he wasn't. Why me? He says, for the followers of the Buddha, these were sorrowful situations, and inconceivable masses of qualities arose in their mind streams. So this is interesting, he says, And when these sorrowful situations arose for the Buddha, those disciples who felt this sorrow, in turn, they created masses of qualities. Meaning, when they saw the Buddha suffer, they felt, oh, I wish our master didn't have, such a hard time with his digestion. And that thought created a positive cause for qualities to ripen later. Yes, question.
Could it be said that Buddhas arrived to Buddhahood because of cause and effect?
Buddhas what?
Arrived to the state of Buddha?
Yeah, of course. Because there is cause and effect, therefore it's possible to go from confused sentient beings to free from confusion Buddhas. If there were no cause and effect, then not possible to go from here to there. But all of this, right, while also having a space-like understanding. So that if you don't forget that part, then statements like neither coming nor going, right? Or even expression, or even like in Mahamudra, Dzogchen context, or in Zen stories, like you cannot become a Buddha, Remember, like I gave the example of one Zen story, right? I mean, like a student was meditating, right? And the master said, what are you doing? He said, I'm meditating. Why are you meditating? Oh, to become a Buddha, right? And then the teacher took a towel from the floor, polish. And the student said, what are you doing, master? He said, I'm polishing a towel. He said, why, what are you polishing a towel? So that it can become a mirror. And then the student said, well, no amount of polishing the towel is going to make you a Buddha. And teacher said, well, no amount of meditating is going to make you a Buddha either, right? So there it seems to be saying, it's not, although it seems to be saying you cannot become a Buddha, you can only be a Buddha. If in English it makes sense, I don't know in Spanish. You cannot become a Buddha, you can only be a Buddha. And that's part of that lesson that is being communicated. But that lesson is kind of a lesson given from the standpoint of space-like experience. But that lesson should not be taken independent of or completely not understanding the lesson of because of cause and effect. Therefore, it is possible to go from the state of a confused being carrying all kinds of suffering into a being free from confusion without suffering, Buddha. Both are necessary. And both are like the other side of each other. So here, coming back, top of page 56, likewise for Pamudrupa, the precious protector of the three worlds, there was no sickness or death. He himself said that he experienced no suffering. However, we, the followers, did suffer. It's because, again, Pamudrupa had bad health, had a lot of health problems. The origin of that, however, we, the followers, did suffer. The origin of that was earlier when Pamudrupa, the protector of the three worlds, himself adhered to the conduct of a bodhisattva and practiced the exchanging of self and others at an improper time. Yeah, so this is why, in the Gongchik it says, if you practice Tonglen without the proper skill, it can turn into a problem. It can lead to problems. So Pamudrupa's like sickness has to do with practicing Tonglen at an improper time, meaning without an understanding of space-like at that point. He practiced Tonglen, and because that practice is so powerful, so then all the illnesses came to him. But of course, later on, through his practice and through his realization of the space-like nature of all phenomena, he achieved Buddhahood, and so he did not suffer. But the results of taking on the suffering, welcoming, attracting all the suffering, continued to manifest in his life. Yeah? Otherwise, how could that have been possible without a preceding cause? As in, how could Pamudrupa's constant issue with bad health have happened without a cause? The cause is he practiced Tonglen at an improper time, meaning when he was not yet ready. Footnote. I think our weak level of practicing Tonglen probably won't accidentally bring this kind of result. Weak meaning our mind not really that focused, so breathe in suffering, breathe out happiness, and then breathe in suffering of all beings, breathe out happiness. Oh, I forgot to put my clothes in the dryer. Okay, got to do that. Oh, breathe in suffering, breathe out happiness. That won't result in, this like Pamudrupa's problem. It's probably talking about, the mind is so powerful already, but then did not yet have absolute bodhicitta kind of grounding. But only later, of course, he actualized absolute bodhicitta. So then in his life, right, as Pamudrupa, he had bad health, but he did not suffer. And so one way to look at that is, again, we can say, when we say that Buddhas are free from suffering, sometimes we think, oh, that means, they live completely easy lives. Not true, All the great masters of Tibet, I can tell you, if you really look at their lives, in terms of material comfort, I think it's a fragment of what you and I have, especially you, all you right now. on Zoom. Your material comforts, is much greater than all the great lamas. Then lifespan, most of us have lived twice as long as the great lamas. Then what have we done? What have we accomplished? Jamwon Kongtrul, I think, lived only until in his 60s, 50s, 60s. But he did so much. He accomplished so much. Many of the lineage masters, great individuals, great practitioners, great lamas, right? So, suffering or not, comfortable or not, long life or short, it's not talking about these external measures. It's talking about how we experience them. Okay, we stop here today. Chanchu Semcho Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gyu Ji Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Ba Yang Go Ne Gong Du Bel War Shou